Hi, everybody. Coming to you today, kind of a snowy day in the 10956, and I got some time, and I woke up, and I wrote 1,500 words, kind of a spasm of spirituality, and again, it's knowledge, but I want knowledge to become wisdom, and the only way that I can do that is to share it with you. So here's the thing. I asked myself this burning question. Why are we here? What is the meaning of our existence? Why are we here? What's the goal? And it's very simple. To get to heaven. That's why we're here. Plain and simple, to get to heaven. And so I asked myself this burning question. At the time of my accident, 10 years ago at the age of 46, was I going to heaven? And it kind of frightens me a little bit. The answer. I didn't like the answer. And here's why. I was sleepwalking through my faith life. I was sleepwalking through my marriage. And neither one of these relationships was where it needed to be. And something had to change. So here's how I come to look at my accident. Were it not for my accident, I don't think I would have ever woken up. If not for my accident, I would never have cried out to him, cried out to Jesus in the brokenness of that hospital room at Helen Hayes Hospital in October when they gave me sleep medication and I could not sleep. I cried out to him. Were it not for the accident, that never would have happened. If not for the accident and the abuse that followed, would I have come to the shrine and begged for his mercy and looked up at the wound and saw his suffering and felt my suffering. If not for the accident, these things never would have happened. If not for the accident, would I have become a Christian, as I did in the summer of 2015? If not for my accident, would I have ever come to the realization that the relationship I had with my wife was not pleasing to God because it was conceived in sin. It was sin that kept me bound to that relationship, and it could not have ever been pleasing to God. And if not for my accident, none of these things would have happened. If not for my accident. If not for my accident, would I have ever had the grace and the strength to proclaim him as I have so many times over the last 7 years of my speaking life? Would I have ever proclaimed him in the public square, completely unafraid to use the words Jesus Christ in a sentence with a smile and nothing but love in my heart? And here's the thing. Over the last 10 years, I truly believe that God, in his wisdom and mercy, granted me this time to figure it all out and to see the places where I sinned and to beg for his mercy, to understand my humbleness and my frailty and my flaws and come to him and said, I'm sorry. And all the while trying to prepare my soul for the moment that I cross over. God gave me this 10 years to figure it all out and to make amends. And so I wanted to share that with you, my friends, because it's so important. And I want you to learn from the mistakes that I made. And that's why I'm making this video. If not for my accident, none of these things would have happened. So let me take you there. Saturday, September 14th, 2013, age 46, I stood up on my surfboard for the final time. I have to ask myself that penetrating, deep spiritual question, the most important question. Was I going to heaven? And the answer, I truly believe, I've dug deep, I've searched my soul, and I truly believe that the answer was no. No, I was certainly not going on a direct flight. And here's the thing, it's that fundamental relationship that was wrong from the beginning. From the moment we were driving to pre-Cana, on the early days of our engagement, after I'd already taken back the ring, my fiance said to me, don't say anything about taking back the ring. They'll think we're not supposed to get married. And I went along. Again, conceived in a lie, conceived in sin. The question, how did I think the marriage was going to go? How did I think troubled times, if they came, how did I think that was going to go? And now I look back and see it all perfectly clearly with my injury. How did I think that was going to go? And that's kind of, it all makes sense when you think about what happened before and what happened afterwards. It all starts to make sense. By the very fact of our humanity, we're all sinners. and I was a sinner. And the problem was, at the age of 46, at the time of my accident, the time my heart stopped beating, the time I stopped breathing, at the moment of my death, I was not living a relationship pleasing to God, and I was not going to heaven, not on the direct flight. And this was very troubling to me, coming to realize it. But God in his mercy has granted me these times, these 10 years, to come to him with a humble and contrite heart, because the life I was living without acknowledging my frailty as a sinner was pure arrogance. It was ego. I was looking for the answers to all the problems and the questions of my life. I was looking within myself for the answers, and that's not where I should have been looking. In my arrogance, in my ego, this was what was happening. And you know what? When you operate from a place of ego, let's talk about those three letters, EGO, edge, God, out. That's what was happening. I was looking for the answers in all the wrong places instead of going to him and going to the church. And that was a fatal flaw. Here's where my accident, if you look at it the right way, can actually have yielded some positives. I know it's very difficult to think of when you see me in this chair, but here's the positives. I got the time to amend my life and to come to Christ with a humble and contrite heart, and started going to confession in the summer of 2015. And now every other month, I invite my pastor over and I make a good confession. And you know what? A couple months ago, beginning a confession, I looked him dead in the eye and said, Father, I want to confess today as if tonight I'm going to be put to the test. You see, I've been going through health changes over the last couple of years since the onset of the pandemic, and my body is in decline. And I always have to be acutely aware that any moment can be my last. And in that acknowledgement, I also have to prepare my soul for the moment that I have to come face to face with Christ. And in doing so, I've gone to multiple confessions and dug deep, deep, deep within my spiritual self and found all the places where I sinned. And you know what? My sins are probably just like yours. The places in our lives where we fail to trust in the will of God. And you know what? Over the course of my life, he gave me everything, all of the love that a man could possibly want or need to be happy and fulfilled. And time after time, I turned my back on it. I was not a good steward of all the gifts that he gave me. And those were mainly a couple of pivotal relationships that could have saved my soul. If I just had the courage to trust in his will and say the simple words, I love you, will you marry me? You know, there's so many times that it was the right time, and each time I tried to find the answers within myself, and they were always there. Trust in his will. All of the great things that he gave me, I turned my back on them until finally I truly believe that he said, okay, Bill, if you need all the answers by yourself, I'm going to let you do it. And that was when I found a relationship with the woman I married. And I was running on my own steam, and I suffered as a result, constantly suffering. And, you know, I'm going to make another video that kind of details the abuse from 2010 until the time of my physical death in 2013. And I feel such a need to communicate these things with you. And here's the thing. It took my physical death to awaken me to a spiritual life and a life living hopefully pleasing to Christ. And I want to communicate this to you. It's not too late for you. Before you have a terrible injury or a crisis in your life, I exhort you, I encourage you with all the love in my heart to try to find a relationship with him. Try to make some time for him. You know, today is Friday. What is it, January 18th or 19th? And, you know, today, every Friday, Tuesday and Friday, we say the sorrowful mysteries of the Rosary. And I always think to myself, you know, what a great place to start. Sometimes, even when it's not appropriate for the day, I default to the sorrowful mysteries. You know, the first of the sorrowful mysteries, the agony in the garden, where Christ, he knew what was coming. And he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. And he brings with him Peter, James, and John. And he asked them, just stay awake. Just stay awake and be on guard and watch over me. And he walks a few feet away and fell prostrate on the ground, begging, calling out, Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. But not as I will, but as you will. That's the agony in the garden. And that's the first sorrowful mystery. And then Christ is arrested, turned over by Judas Iscariot. And that gives us the second mystery of the sorrowful mysteries. And that's a scourging at the pillar, where they whipped him, they beat him, they spat upon him, time after time after time. He was absolutely brutalized, and he did this for the sin, for the shame of our sins and our spiritual nature. He laid his life down. And the third of the sorrowful mysteries, the crowning of thorns. They fashioned a crown of thorns and briars and jabbed it and screwed it down into his head. And the blood ran down into his eyes across his face. They did this to him, and he endured it for us. The fourth of the sorrowful mysteries, he carried the cross. Jesus carried his cross. And this is the thing that the Romans, this was not part of their practice. They would have a cross brought to Golgotha, the place of the skulls, and they would nail the criminal to the cross. But Jesus, they wanted to humiliate, and they forced him to carry his cross through the streets of Jerusalem. And he carried that cross. He carried our sin to Golgotha. And finally, the fifth of the sorrowful mysteries, they nailed him to the cross. They put a spear in his side. And even from that cross, he called out, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. And again, from the cross, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? And in my brokenness, in that hospital room in Helen Hayes, shortly after my injury, I cried out this very same prayer. My God, why have you forsaken me? And the truth is, he hadn't abandoned me. I had turned my back on him. And it was through this injury that I was able to come back to him. And you know what? I offer this up, my friends, to all of you, especially those who are trying to find a relationship with him. Watch this video and see how I'm trying so desperately to communicate it to you. You've got time to make amends, to right your ship, to turn everything around in your life. Whether it's an abusive relationship that's pulling you further and further away from God, no matter what it is, you have time. You have time. And please use my experience to help you turn your ship around and come to him. And I say him with a capital H, right? Because that's who I'm talking about. And that's the purpose of this video.